At my going away party, when I left my last job, one of the people who reported to me made the comment, some people lead with the carrot, some people lead with a stick, and Becky seems to lead without either, and it works. And in that moment, I realized that what I had been putting in was working, that it was a little bit different, and that you can lead in a whole different way.
Hey guys, welcome back to the StoryFirst podcast. My name is Damian Gray, and I'm excited for another episode. Today we have back with us Coach Becky Stickley of Becky Stickley Coaching. Thank you so much for coming back. I've been truly grateful to the advice you've been sharing, really just tearing through the layers and giving people the opportunity to kind of self-examine, but also leave with some steps that they can kind of take and move forward kind of instantly. Because a lot of the things that we're talking about now is helping the actual creative before the technical skills. So thank you so much for having us and coming back for the second time. I'm truly grateful for it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the previous episode, we were talking about turning your drama spiral into math. And I loved the ability that we had to kind of walk through that and really get clear on recognizing all the noise and the clouds and the foggy gray can be turned into clarity or turned into a path that can lead towards clarity. It doesn't have to remain this foggy, ominous thing. There are steps that we can take, and there's really things we can think through to make it a path. And the path may not be easy, as we've shared, but it is a path that can lead you to progress and into the process that you're having. And so now, as we kind of turn this corner, I'm thinking about as we see that path, now we recognize, man, we want to kind of be able to have a great overlook or overwatch on the different things that we have going on and kind of managing what we're doing, how we're doing it, keeping up with why we're doing it, and really having a great perspective on where we're moving. And which is why today's episode is all about the makings of a great manager and being able to kind of see that from a wide view, but also recognizing the steps that you're able to take in the entire organization or whoever you're representing, progressing together. So I like to blank slate it. I want to blank slate. I always like going in assuming that nobody knows anything about anything. So that way we can all start from the ground up. If you could, Becky, just what exactly does it mean to even be a manager in a business? Like maybe that might be a little bit different coming from like a creative perspective, but what does that even mean? Like, what does that look like?
Sure. So I think what it means can take a lot of forms, but we're always managing. We're either managing things, systems, processes, or we're managing people. And those could be contractors or staff. And so that will evolve. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. What that looks like will evolve through the course of your business as it grows. You know, in the beginning, you're managing yourself and managing your own brain. And there's a lot to be said for that, because that does lay the foundation. How you talk to yourself and treat yourself and coach yourself even really does impact how you're then going to treat your employees or your contractors. So it starts in the beginning, again, managing how people are coming into your business, those workflows, and managing the human component. When you talk about kind of the right way, both good and bad, like what can that look like? It can look any way. You know, there is no one right way to lead or manage. And that is great news. But it's also kind of daunting because there's no manual. Like you can't just go and pick up a book on how to manage and lead. And particularly in a creative business, part of the reason you got into this was because you do have a unique spin. You do have a unique lens on whatever it is you're doing. And you don't want to turn that off when you go into management or leadership mode. You want to bring that with you. And again, that is great news, but it also can be a little confusing when the world is your oyster, so to speak.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And that's one of the things I'm curious about, because people are on all different spectrums in their business, whether they're starting out or they've been in it for a while, or maybe they're transitioning from this. They wanted to do this and now they're focusing on this. So because it seems like that goal is ever moving, how does one be able to manage all those different thoughts and things that are happening, or really those different organization structures or inquiry processes or whatever it is? So I want to kind of, as we move forward, maybe taking it one step at a time. So thinking about a person that's just starting out, they're like, let's say Damien 8-9 years ago, just starting out, trying to get some traction on my skill, trying to develop contacts and leads for work, and getting social media together, and trying to figure out what's in our community, and trying to like develop all these different pathways to different pathways to success in these different areas. Is that a good time to begin thinking about like managing and like having a good overview on what it is that we do and how it is what we do? Or should I just be focusing on like the work and then that comes later? Like what does that look like, or what's the best way to approach being a good manager? Being a good manager from that kind of perspective.
Sure. So I think the early days in your business, you definitely want to be focused on those high impact activities that are going to be bringing in customers, serving those people really well. And again, kind of developing that unique voice. So I don't want to diminish that at all. Like that is a huge component of those early days, maybe even early years of your business. That being said, I don't think it's a good idea to ignore the management piece, because what can happen is if you're really good at that first part, those high impact activities, you're going to grow and then you're going to have this mess to clean up because you haven't worked, in and on your business at the same time. You haven't developed systems. You haven't developed the structure. Again, even in managing yourself well. And now you're almost going to have to backtrack to pick up the pieces. So I think it's not unlike when you see people in more the corporate type environments. You get these people who come in, even at that first level, and you're like, wow, they're going to be an amazing manager. They're not managing people. They're not managing big systems, but they have these processes in place that they're doing on their own. The way they manage their inbox and inquiries, the way they hold themselves in meetings, you see that early on, even before they are leading these big teams. And I think that's what it is when you're in those early days in your business. You can still be growing those muscles. And I think some ways to do that, one of the things that we used to joke, but also was very true in my days as a manager leading some bigger teams, was no surprises. You don't want to have surprises. You don't want people to not know what to expect when they come to you. Like, are you going to be Jekyll or Hyde? Are you going to be, super friendly? Or are you going to be putting down the hammer? They wanted to know clearly what the expectations were. And you can set that even when it's just you. Like how are you treating yourself? How are you delegating to the future you? I know we talked last time about all the amazing ideas that we can have in our business, really at any stage, but particularly in that beginning stage. How can you set up processes so that you're focusing again on what matters now, but not losing sight of where you want to be? How are you delegating that to you a month from now, you a year from now, when you're ready to pick up those things?
Gotcha.
I think all of those things, you can, again, start kind of building those muscles, even in the very early days of your business.
Awesome. Yeah. And I want to kind of dive into that. Sorry about the little camera mishap. Stuff happens. It's okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so you touched on it, because one would think, man, I'm just starting out. I don't really need to worry about that until I get to a point where I can, add people onto the team, or I don't have to think about it until, I don't know, I reach a certain amount of, net income or whatever it is, gross
Mhm.
income. And so thinking about that, maybe we can dive into like a person in that position where they're just starting out. What are specifically some things that they can begin like managing or like thinking about when it comes to investing into themselves and recognizing the processes that they have, or maybe in thinking about, like you're saying, where they want to be, how they can actually start thinking about the things that they're managing now to help that.
Mhm.
Like, can you touch a little bit more on that? Like dive into that a little deeper. What does that look
Sure.
like for that person?
Yeah, again, I think it can look very different, but some things to maybe think
Yeah.
about. One is the customer journey. What does a customer's journey look like with you? And again, how is that unique? And that takes on a couple different things and can really create some tangents because that helps you set up processes, everywhere from the beginning of your marketing to bringing them in, kind of having that intake process, an onboarding process, whatever that looks like, being clear and setting expectations. Your customers don't want surprises. I talk about that with staff, but also your customers. They don't want to be surprised in a bad way. So,
Mm,
setting those clear expectations and looking at that journey, because depending on what kind of creative you are, you want those people coming back over and over. And if it is more of a one-time thing, they can become people that are referring others to you. So looking at that customer journey and managing that along the way. The other is, and I've said this a couple times, but I'm glad you mentioned diving into it, is managing yourself.
mm,
And what that looks like is, as creatives, as entrepreneurs, sometimes it's just you. Like, there's
mhm.
no one to bounce ideas off of. There's no one handing out gold stars. And so, how are you talking to yourself? How are you propelling yourself forward? Are you letting yourself stay in that drama? Are you asking yourself dead end questions like, why can't you get this right? Why are we doing this? Or are you asking yourself awesome questions that maybe have hard answers, but are going to propel you forward? So again, it's almost like talking to a new employee. Are you like demeaning them? Are you punishing them? Or are you saying, okay, hey, here's the concrete questions. Here's the math, like we talked about last episode. Let's
Right.
talk about the solutions for that. And that can happen inside our own heads. And it does happen inside our own heads. So how you manage that really matters, especially at that first level, because if you don't get it there. I mean, I think you've probably seen this in the industry too, people who don't last. They go back
Mm,
to 9 to 5 jobs, or they quit their business, or they change things because of that self-talk a lot of times, and of that
yeah.
customer journey, and of the systems they put in place to make things a little more easy on themselves.
Yeah. Man, so good, because it almost like, of course, you mentioned first the customer's journey, and then you mentioned like my journey as the person that's over it,
Yeah.
and then add to the point where, you might be bringing people on and things like that,
Mhm.
their journey. It's almost like you're in the business of people. Like you're trying to develop your sense
Mhm.
of not, I don't want to just say just encouraging people, but giving each person, whether it's the customer, or whether it's myself, or whether it's people we're adding on, giving them the space and environment to grow. Like the uh talking about your, like, recognizing how I talk about myself, or how I speak to myself when it comes to new things that are happening, is, are they, like you mentioned, dead end questions. Like I could
Mhm.
definitely see how I could at times ask myself things like, man, are you ever gonna get this thing going, or do you really want to do that, instead of asking questions that have kind of a journey to it, like,
Mhm.
what does this look like if we do this, or for the customer, what do you think about doing something like this. You're kind of creating an environment where it's a whole bubble where everybody is growing together.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that because, again, a lot of the focus tends to be on the technical skill of what we do. But
Mm-hmm.
switching it over to this, now it's an entire environment of we want to grow together
Yeah.
and creating the atmosphere for it. So that's a really interesting kind of perspective that I'm recognizing what you're sharing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other thoughts before I go forward to the next thing? I don't want to
Well,
cut you
just
off.
one thing that you've talked about, and I think the whole reason you have this podcast, right, is the technical skill is important. Like,
For sure.
people are coming to you because you have the technical skill, right? That a technical
100%.
skill that they don't have. That being said, if you're not able to communicate the outcome of that, if you don't have a good customer journey, if you're a bear to work with, your technical skill doesn't matter. You know, if you're a wedding photographer, say, but I have no idea what I'm going to end up getting from you. Your process is hard. I'm dealing with 20 other vendors. I'm going to go to somebody else, even if you have the most amazing technical skill. So again, you need that. Don't want to diminish that at all. But
For
these
sure.
other pieces are what are going to bring people in and have them stay with you.
Awesome. Becky, I couldn't have said it better myself. That is the perfect example of what we're doing here today. Thank you for sharing that. That's perfect.
You're welcome.
And 100%.
He didn't pay me to say it.
Not at all. Not at all. But that's exactly the point behind this. There's so much focus on that. And like you said, it is important. 100%. You know, it's really what allows you. It's a passageway to growth as you're able to develop your skill, but not without the things that we're talking about today. Without that, it's really, you're either a gear in a system where like you're disposable. You flip a bad gear out, you put another gear in and it works fine. Or you're actually able to develop an entire environment to bring people into, and they value that growth. They value the simplicity. They value that there's not noise and a lot of different things happening in the process. It removes the distractions. So well said. That's perfect. Okay. Yeah. So we, talking about the person that's just starting out. So now you get to a point where there's a little bit of traction, right? The business is moving along. You recognize that you have a little bit of an intake system for what it is that you're doing. That's beyond just like, all right, I think I'm just going to randomly call this person today and maybe send them an invoice. Like you have a little bit of an intake process that you normally do. You have a little bit of a template to how you share with them. Like maybe you're scheduling a phone call and things like that. Like you have a little bit of a process. What should things look like internally when it comes to managing that? Because I guess you have managing the services or you have managing the services that you offer, and then you have managing the kind of the people or the client interaction that you have. So what are some things that we could look at to like just kind of check the temperature and see, okay, what does this look like when it comes to managing, or what are some things we should be looking out for when we're in that kind of position?
Yeah, again, I think it depends a lot on the business that you're in. And, this is where communication becomes really important too. So being able to listen just as much as you're speaking. So when clients are giving you feedback, when contractors are giving you feedback, again, depending on the market you're in, maybe you're interacting with other creative vendors at the same time, and they may be giving you little tidbits of feedback, and recognizing what you make that mean. Because I think sometimes when we're really good at what we do, and maybe we're producing an amazing product, but there's something about the interaction, there's something about the system that's not quite right, or anything, we can bristle a little bit when we get that feedback. And really what the question is what are you making it mean? Are you making it mean that you're not a good manager, that you're not good at this, that, again, back to the spiral that we talked about last episode? Or can you just make it mean like, okay, here's some feedback. What do I want to do with this? Like, is it a one-off? that maybe I don't need to incorporate? Or am I getting kind of similar feedback and there's an easy tweak or maybe a not so easy tweak that needs to be looked at and made? But being really open to that, being open to listening and recognizing that it's not about you as an individual. This is your business. And we don't always get it right. Again, there's no manual. So figuring out, I love the statement. There's this, she's a pediatric like psychologist or something. And she talks about children and she talks about like, as a parent, like two things can be true at the same time. And I think as business owners, we need to remember that too, that two things can be true. We can be really great at what we do and we can get better. We can be really amazing at the technical side and we need to figure out some things on the mental side or emotional side or the system side. And that doesn't mean that things are broken and we need to burn it all down. Right. The other thing that I just want to say, because, as we're talking about kind of this journey as an entrepreneur, it isn't, again, unlike moving up through a corporate ladder where sometimes we have to learn to give things away as we move up, that we have to delegate. And some key components of that are, again, that clarity, being clear with your expectations to either a contractor or an employee. And this is, again, why we grow that muscle early on. What are those high impact activities that only you can do? What are people paying you for that are just you? And what parts do they they don't even probably know are happening, that they don't care if your virtual assistant is taken care of. So really being able to differentiate that, I think, starts at that very beginning level. And again, communicating very clear expectations.
Gotcha. Let me ask a question, because you've mentioned it twice now. And I know it's going to be different per business. But when you say finding the high impact activities, what does that mean? Or could you give an example of what that is, based on, I don't know, whatever a business you can pick, or I don't know.
Sure. So, I am not in a very creative business, I wouldn't say, but there may be things. So for example, you doing video, actually being on site, shooting that video, finding the right angles, knowing what you're looking at, lighting, kind of the execution of it, or maybe even the editing. Those pieces are you, like they're that unique creative spin that you're adding to it versus your billing. It needs to happen. It definitely needs to happen, but no one cares if it comes from Damien or if it comes from Becky, Gotcha. Sometimes, maybe it's some of your social media, like you can create the content, but someone else can be posting it. What are you doing that is creating clients? And you're right, it's going to be very different. And again, this is where managing your mind and asking really good questions. Where are your clients coming from? So if you're in that building mode, maybe it's, going to events, going to, creative, not fairs, but you know what I mean? Like where people are set up and looking for vendors. If that's where they're coming from, you need to know that that's a high impact activity. And the only way to know that is by evaluating where your clients are coming from. So that is, to your point, it does really vary. Those high impact activities will very much vary, but you'll never know what they are because, again, there is no manual. Right. I wish there was, believe me.
Right.
So doing that evaluation, and again, that is a part of being a good manager, not just go into infinity, but taking the moment to pause and evaluate. Okay, last month I brought in this many new clients. Where did they come from? What has their experience been? Because then you can maximize and replicate.
Man, and I think that's so important, is because when you're in the middle of, say you're in the middle of a project and that we're filming and went through the process, got calibrated, scheduled the film session, got the interviewees calibrated on what we're talking about, got the supporting, did the whole nine, edited it, turned it in, get a review back, fix any little thing, going through the whole process. And it's almost normal to you do that, and then the project is turned in, and then you get the green light from the client saying it's good, and you're like, all right, next project.
Yep.
And there's not a time for feedback. There's not a time for, oh man, thank you so much. Let's schedule like 1 or 2 more meetings just to conclude. And then I'd love to hear back from you guys on what the process was like, or if there was anything that you recognized maybe we could tweak, or maybe there's a point where it seemed kind of like unknown as far as what the next steps were or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
In my career, in my field, that section right there is not utilized as much as it should be. And for me, I'll be honest, that's something I began implementing like 3-4 years ago out of the 8 or 9 that I've been doing it. And it's just because we're so fixated. Of course, you know, you're your own self-made, you're trying to get things going, you want to make sure that there's enough money at the end of the month, like there's you know, all of those things. And it's very easy to say, all right, we got the check, all right, move on, instead of saying, you know, wait, I want to make sure that there's longevity in what we're doing. And what they've just gone through is like the heart of what we do. And we need feedback because we want it to build from here. We don't want it to stay, we do want it consistent. We don't want it to plateau and get stagnant. We want the continual growth. And I feel for us, finding that in the feedback and really being as diligent as we are in that, like we're in the rest of the project, is a part that I think is missing for a lot of what it is that we do. So what you're sharing, all of it, the main thing that's ringing in my ears is like being able to have that time with the customer to be able to kind of go back and really walk through what the process was like for them, for sure.
Yeah. And even asking yourself, I think it's important to do that and get that feedback, but even the evaluation just on your own, like, where did I see as pain points? You know, I 100%. Joke with some of my clients about, you know, your cows getting out. So if we live in a rural area of Virginia, people's cows get out. You can just keep putting the cows back in. But if you don't fix the fence, figure out where they're coming out and fix the fence, you're going to keep dealing with the same problem over and over and over. So the feedback is great. But even for you, like, gosh, it took me way longer to do this one thing, or we had to go back and forth 20 times on this one item, or, you know, this took a lot of emails. Okay. Like, you can apologize for it. The customer maybe doesn't mind so much. The customer maybe doesn't even notice some of your pain points, but for you to evaluate them. So now the process is getting easier and easier and quicker, and you can turn out more. But I think what you're saying, I think it is a creative, you know, something that happens in the creative business. It happens in the corporate world too, with doing more with less. And, you know, some of these bigger projects that people are taking on, there's no time left for evaluation. And so again, your cows keep getting out and you're not fixing it, or, you know, you're not learning. And so that you talk about a plateau. That's, you know, when you stop learning, you stop growing. So I think that is really important. Not just, you know, whoever may be listening, I promise it applies to you regardless of the business or environment you're in.
100%. Man, that's awesome. Very encouraging. So you get to that point where you're kind of starting to see systems grow, and just shared a bunch of knowledge on that. I was taking notes as you were sharing. I was not like texting somebody or something. Just so you know, I was writing notes down here.
Love it. I love it.
Very, very encouraging. And so now, you know, we get to a point, you know, hopefully where big growth, like there's consistency in things coming in. You're wanting to develop, you know, you're in the process of developing a team, you know, so there's some thoughts of onboarding, because you literally just can't handle the load anymore. Like it's literally, it's flowing over the cup. It's getting onto the table. It's spilling down to the floor. Like it's completely overload. So what are some things to be like thinking about when it comes to managing that? Because there's a few different things happening there, but I'd love to just share your initial thoughts on what that even looks like when it comes to managing that kind of a output that's coming out.
Sure. So the first thing that I just want to say, and this is what I see with a lot of my clients, and you know why I do what I do, is This stage can be hard. It doesn't mean that you are not a good manager or leader. It just means that you need to work new muscles, that you need to take, you were lifting the 5-pound weights when you started your business and you were managing your own mind and all of that. And now we're picking up 20-pound weights, and it's going to be hard for a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you are not capable. So I think keeping that in mind, because again, that is what can stunt a lot of people's growth, is that, they get to this point and it's overflowing. And they're like, well, I guess I can't take on anymore. No, you can't. You just need to learn to grow your team. And again, I probably sound like a broken record, but being clear about expectations is so important at this stage. People cannot read your mind unless you put that mind on paper somewhere. So that's where it's nice to start developing this as you go, and you can tweak. It's easier to tweak than start from scratch, but having standard operating procedures, having templates, having different things like that can really help, because I am guilty of it. Having someone come to me and say, I did this thing. And I'm like, why in the world did you do that? Or why did you do it that way? And they're like, well, what's the other way? And I'm like, well, I know it. It's right here. How can you not know that it's in my mind? So people can't read your mind. And so just remembering that and being really clear about expectations, again, processes. And this goes right back to your initial question about like the right way to be a leader, being really honest about who you are. Some people manage in really different ways, and that's okay. But you need to be honest with people who come into your culture. Like you may be a culture of one right now. You may be a culture of one plus a few contractors, but you have a culture, and you need to articulate that and be honest about it and own it, because not everyone's going to be a good fit for you. Whether it's how you communicate or what you communicate, or, these are some SOPs, but they're just guardrails. I want you to do it the best way you know how. Or here's these SOPs and you better follow them to the T. That's okay too, but you need to own that. So, clarity, not expecting people to read your mind, and being honest about your culture, your company culture, I think are really big components when you reach that bigger level.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it's interesting hearing that. In my head, I'm recognizing that you're kind of alluding to it. Those things don't sound completely abstract or random to when you first started your business. It just seems like now it's just a whole lot more tangible. Like it's more on paper. It's more template. It's more scheduled. Like there's time that has to be put into it, as far as, like, of course, preparing for it, but also delegation and really getting, the team calibrated or the culture calibrated, those kinds of things. There's more input of time that it has to take, versus when you're a team of one and you're like starting out thinking about those things and getting it in order. So that's always interesting to me, because again, the thought is I don't have to think about those things until I reach that point. But with what you're sharing, the time is now. Like you can begin thinking about those things from the beginning. And when you get to that point, you'll probably be even more so ahead of the game when you get to that point, if you begin thinking about it, initially from the beginning. So I love that, because it really destroys that superstition or that stereotype or that thought that, yeah, I'm good, I'll think about that later. But it's actually, if you're talking about longevity for your business, that's a core concept of who you are and why you're doing this and how you're doing this and when you're doing this. Like thinking about those things back then, but it comes into fruition at that point as well. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, it works backwards too. Like you don't need to have every SOP imaginable when it's just you. But you can start thinking that through. It's just like, my daughter just started kindergarten. I'm not trying to teach her calculus, not because she's never going to do calculus, but she needs those foundational steps. She needs to learn her numbers and 1 + 1 and all of that. And again, it doesn't mean, well, I guess I'm only ever going to do addition. No,
Right.
you're setting those foundations as the small business owner, as the solopreneur, to set you up so that then you will do amazing, huge, complicated calculus problems when you
Right.
have that big team.
Right. Man, that's awesome.
But if you
Perfect.
can't do calculus now, it doesn't mean you
Right.
never will.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Like there has to be that journey. Like
Yeah.
you don't just, you know, what's the Monopoly where you have to you can skip it and collect $200. You skip go
Yeah.
and collect. Like you can't. There's no skipping it. You
No.
have to walk through that process. There has to be in. I mean, in everything that we do, but in this in particular, there has to be the process of, like you're saying, flexing those muscles, starting with the 5 pound weights, working with
Mhm.
where you are now, trying to figure out what you can see. And this episode really gives a lot of perspective on what are some of the things that you can see at any point of your
Mhm.
career or your business or what you're wanting to do. What does that look like? And keep lifting. And then as you keep going, you're recognizing more. And that process, man, I love the process. I love the process. So thank you for bringing that up. That's perfect.
You're welcome.
And a few just initial thoughts that I want to just throw out there as we're kind of getting towards the end of it is one, it's okay if it's hard.
Mhm.
It's like we're saying, it's a process. There will be difficulty. There will be your brain wanting to survive and keep its brain cells from working. And you have to kind of push past your feelings and your what you want to do and recognize what you need to do. That there
Mhm.
is difficulty in it. I feel like we're all constantly in the middle of that battle. Like it's going to be difficult. Um, and then you mentioned the answering the question, what's the right way to be a leader or a manager? And I find comfort in recognizing that on one side, comfort that there is no manual to it.
Mhm.
There is no, there's just no, I don't want to say there's no right or wrong, but there really is recognizing who you are, like how you are built, and being able to use that in the right way to be fruitful, like to grow in what you're doing.
Mhm.
So I think with those guardrails there, you're able to take steps forward. And as you do that, recognizing more and more how you were built as you're moving forward through the chains, trying to work it out. Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I love all of these things. And even more so, Becky, you have an entire event that's coming up that's built for this. I believe
Yes.
it's more than a manager. Is that right?
Yes, you got it.
Yes. The more than a manager event, conference, workshop. I've looked through it and I really love the opportunity for anybody that's interested in it because it's a cool opportunity to get hands-on experience that you will leave with instantly. And it's not something where it's like, we have to wait until you get this information. And then maybe if you it's like, boom, in your face. So I love if you could, Becky, tell us a little bit about that event, about the workshop and what it's about, how people can get involved. Just tell us more about it.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, it's called More Than a Manager. It's a 1 day training in Woodstock, Virginia, December 8th. It's all day. We're going to come together. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that we've just talked about here. Managing your own mind first. How to even do that. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Having difficult conversations, delegating, all of that stuff about being clear and setting clear expectations. Again, that sounds great, but how do I do that?
Right.
So what you'll learn in this 1 day workshop is frameworks, because I do want the world to be filled with a lot of different managers, with a lot of different styles. We need that in the world today. So I'm not going to give you scripts. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but I'm going to give you frameworks, again, that you can start implementing immediately with your own style. But you don't have to think about the how. Like, oh my gosh, how do I have a difficult conversation? How do I manage my own mind? I'll give you the tool and you get to just take it and plug it in to whatever your situation is. And as we talked about today, these tools are going to apply whether you're an aspiring manager, how you can start implementing those now to get yourself ready for the next level, whether you are a manager and maybe you're having a little bit of difficulty at that new level, or you're looking to excel to the next level. Maybe you manage a couple people or a project and you want to become a director or have a big team. These tools will help you get there. So again, it's December 8th in Woodstock, Virginia. You can go to my website, BeckyStickleyCoaching.com/morethanamanager to register.
Awesome. And if they have any questions about it or you and the services that you offer, where can they find you online?
Yep. So I am on Facebook and Instagram at Becky Stickley Coaching. You can send me a message, or if you head to my website, there is a little button that you can click to email me.
Awesome. Man, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to really walk us through what that looks like, that managerial oversight position. I'm recognizing more and more it is literally foundational to the growth and development of our organization and everyone's, really. So thank you so much for taking the time. So we've gone through turning your spiral into math and now the makings of a great manager. We'll wrap up in the next episode with when and how do we end the work week? We've gone through the spiral, turning it into math. We've gone to figuring out how we actually can be a great manager of what we're doing. How do we know when to end the work week? I'm so excited for it. That's a really great one that we're geared up for. We're excited for. Thank you guys again for tuning back in. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. And you guys have a great rest of your week. All right. Bye-bye.